Shadows in the Veil. This is a work of fiction and does not draw from real events. The following narrative, an intricate blend of psychological suspense, domestic noir, and supernatural undertones, unfolds across familiar landscapes and shadowed memories. Its pages reveal a story where every whispered secret and half-spoken word pulses with the threat of something beyond our understanding. On a damp autumn evening in London, the city's rain-slicked cobblestones gleamed under the glow of street lamps as Alice Carter hurried toward a modest terraced house in Notting Hill. The chill in the air wasn't merely the result of the season, it was as though the very night exhaled a foreboding promise of revelations best left undisturbed. Alice's heart pounded, accompanied by the echo of her uneven footsteps. She had returned to the home of her childhood, a place where the past had always whispered and sometimes screamed in the silence. Inside the dimly lit foyer, time seemed to meld with memories. The polished wood floors, stains of wine and tears long dried, and the lingering aroma of lavender and decay all conspired in a sinister harmony. In the parlor, where an antique chandelier cast distorted shadows, Alice was greeted by Robert Hayes, a childhood friend whose gentle smile had given way to something deeper and more secretive over the years. "Alice," he murmured, his voice tinted with both relief and melancholy, "you're finally back." The reunion was bittersweet. Robert's eyes darted nervously to a large portrait that dominated the wall, a depiction of Evelyn Monroe, a once vibrant woman whose life had ended under mysterious circumstances. Rumors had swirled through their small circle, and some whispered that Evelyn's spectre still roamed these halls. Alice shuddered at the thought, not entirely convinced that ghosts were merely the figments of overactive imaginations, but aware that sometimes the unexplained emerged from the very crevices of one's own soul. The conversation unfolded slowly. "Do you remember when we'd spend nights discussing whether the walls could talk?" Alice asked softly, her eyes fixed on the painting. It felt like every surface in this place held a secret. Robert's fingers brushed the edge of his worn notebook. "I remember," he admitted. "And now I wonder if perhaps they have started to speak. Every rumble in the floor, every tap at the window, it's as if the house itself is trying to confide its dark legacy." At that moment, a sharp knock at the door startled them both. Opening it revealed Victoria Wells, an enigmatic journalist from Boston who had arrived on a tip that there was more to this house than met the eye. Her eyes, a striking shade of steel blue, scanned the foyer before settling on Alice. "I'm sorry to intrude," she said, her tone both apologetic and insistent. "But I believe the history of this house holds connections to the disappearance of Jeremy Dawson, a case that has baffled investigators for years." As the conversation deepened, an uneasy alliance formed among the trio. Over cups of bitter tea in the cramped kitchen with its creaking floorboards and stained wallpaper, they pored over old letters and yellowed diaries. The writings of Catherine Evans, a distant relative of Alice's who had vanished decades before, hinted at dark family secrets, unspoken pacts, and hints of supernatural occurrences that defied logical explanation. "There is something in this house, something that doesn't belong," Victoria observed, flipping through the brittle pages of a diary. "Every entry, every scribbled note, speaks of a presence that haunts the family lineage. Some say it is a curse. Others believe it is a manifestation of repressed guilt." Alice's voice trembled as she read aloud a particularly disquieting entry, "I can hear the walls breathing. At night, the silence is broken by whispers, soft, insidious murmurs that promise retribution for sins long buried." The words seemed to reverberate around the small kitchen, shaking loose cobwebs of fear that clung to the corners of their minds. The storm outside intensified, with gusts of wind lashing against the windows, as if nature itself sought to expel the secrets held within. In a moment of uneasy calm, the trio decided to search the attic, a place reputed to be the repository of many of the house's inexplicable artifacts. As they ascended the narrow staircase, each step filled with dread and anticipation, the temperature dropped. A phantasmal chill seeped into their bones. Above the attic's dim light, Michael Sutton, a local historian and expert in supernatural lore, joined them. Michael's arrival was heralded by a gust of wind, as if the house had summoned him specifically. I have been expecting you, he said in a low, measured tone that vibrated with both knowledge and caution. There are stories woven into every beam here, a tapestry of sorrow, guilt, and things that lurk in the darkness. The attic itself was a veritable museum of lost items, dusty trunks filled with clothes that once belonged to forgotten generations, faded photographs in ornate frames, and boxes of brittle letters. Among these relics, the group discovered a peculiar mirror, its silver frame tarnished by age and neglect. The reflection it offered was warped, as if reality was struggling to conform to an alternate truth. In that curvature of glass, the faint outline of a woman seemed to appear, a ghostly spectre amid the clutter of history. "Who is she?" Alice asked, her voice nearly a whisper. Michael stepped closer, his eyes narrowing in concentration. "She may be the key to everything, a woman whose fate is inextricably tied to the curse that plagues this house. The mirror has been known to capture souls, or perhaps the remnants of souls, long after their physical departure." As the night deepened, the four delved further into their investigation, their conversation interspersed with long silences as if the house demanded respect in its silence. In one particularly intense moment, Victoria confided in a hushed voice, "Jeremy Dawson was my cousin. I never thought his disappearance would be linked to these legends. But now, every creak in the floor and every shifting shadow speaks of something far darker than mere coincidence." The group's inquiry led them to the forgotten corners of the manor's secret passageways behind heavy draperies, locked cabinets concealing personal diaries, and hidden rooms that defied the architectural blueprint of an ordinary house. In a narrow corridor off the dining room, they stumbled upon a narrow door leading to a chamber that had been sealed shut for decades. With trembling hands and mounting trepidation, Alice turned the key inherited from her mother, and the door yielded with a groan, unleashing a gust of putrid air that carried the scent of decay and despair. Inside this hidden chamber lay evidence of sinister rituals and cryptic symbols drawn on the walls in what appeared to be both paint and something far more organic. The inscriptions chronicled a lineage steeped in guilt, a family cursed by a series of decisions made in the throes of desperation. "These markings," Robert murmured, stepping slowly across the uneven floor, "they're almost like a language, a desperate plea etched onto the walls." With each new discovery, the house seemed to react. Objects would shift imperceptibly, and distant sounds like a child's laughter or the soft humming of a lullaby lingered unanswered in the air. Michael explained, "In supernatural lore, structures such as this often become vessels for unresolved emotions. They absorb the anguish, the guilt, and even the love of those who once lived here, perpetuating a cycle of memory and madness." The investigation soon became more perilous. Late one night, as a violent storm lashed against the windows, Alice awoke to an eerie glow emanating from the living room. Rushing to investigate, she encountered an unsettling scene. The mirror from the attic now hung above the mantelpiece, its surface swirling with mist as if concealing a portal to another realm. In that reflective surface, she could discern a figure standing behind her, a gaunt, spectral woman with hollow eyes and a sorrow that spanned centuries. Startled yet transfixed, Alice whispered, "Who are you?" The apparition remained silent for a long, unbearable moment before replying in a voice that was barely audible, "I am the keeper of this house's grief. I am the embodiment of every secret and every regret." The words sent tremors down Alice's spine, heralding a revelation she was not prepared for, a revelation that some truths, once uncovered, were doomed to torment the living. The following days blended into a feverish quest for answers. Victoria, armed with her investigative prowess honed in Boston's gritty underbelly, uncovered historical records linking the house to a series of inexplicable tragedies spanning more than a century. Local archives revealed that the manor had once belonged to a reclusive noble family known for their alleged practice of dark rituals. Their obsession with bending fate and defying the natural order had allegedly invited an ancient malevolence into their midst. Meanwhile, Robert's research yielded personal diaries and letters written in cryptic prose. In one such diary, a long-dead relative named Jonathan Hayes wrote, "In every shadow I see the visage of remorse. In every whisper of the wind, I hear the secrets of our sins. The house has devoured us, piece by piece, until only regret remains." These words resonated with the group, echoing their own struggles with past mistakes, losses, and the unrelenting pull of family legacy. Determined to confront the malevolent force that haunted them, the team devised a plan to perform a symbolic ritual, the modern echo of an age-old attempt to cleanse the cursed energy that had plagued the estate. On a pitch-black night in early November in the small town of Salem, Massachusetts, where history and myth often intertwined, they gathered in a spare room that overlooked the once haunted ruins of an old family mansion. Here, under the flickering light of candles, they recited passages from the old diaries and invoked names long locked away in memory. "Our hearts are heavy with the weight of secrets," Alice intoned, her voice steady yet trembling. "We call upon those who suffered to find peace, and beseech the unknown to release its grip on the souls trapped here." The air grew thick with palpable intensity. As their voices merged in a single plea, a sudden wind burst through the room, extinguishing several candles and sparking a brief, unholy conflagration of ghostly imagery along the walls. In that moment, the boundary between the living and the dead appeared to blur. Robert's eyes filled with tears as he recalled the memory of a lost love, and Victoria grasped her locket with a fervor that bordered on desperation. Yet, amidst the turbulence, it became clear that the house itself was responding. The temperature plummeted, and the soft hum of a lullaby, one that no record could account for, resonated from the floorboards. "This is not a mere act of cleansing," Michael observed with a tone both odd and foreboding, "but rather a summons, a final reckoning." As the ritual reached its apex, spectral images from the past manifested before their eyes, fleeting glimpses of family gatherings turned tragic, of moments of exquisite despair, and of the relentless passage of time dictated by secrets and sin. In one vision, Alice saw herself as a child, running through these very corridors with unburdened laughter, a stark contrast to the sorrow that now draped every surface. In an ecstasy of terror and heartbreak, the spectre of the sorrowful woman from the mirror reappeared. Her eyes, deep pools of despair, seemed to hold the accumulated grief of generations. "You cannot banish what is already a part of you," she intoned as her transparent figure hovered just beyond reach. "Only when you accept the darkness within may the light dare to break through." The words struck the group with the force of revelation. Each realized that the true horror was not solely the external curse, but the internal torment of secrets, lies, and unspoken regrets. It was their own hidden demons that empowered the malevolent spirit. In that eerie chamber, as the boundary between reality and nightmare converged, the group made a silent pact to face their inner darkness, to unearth painful truths, and to reconcile with the haunted legacy that had defined their lives for far too long. In the days that followed, the investigation took on an introspective quality. Alice spent hours alone in the abandoned drawing room, poring over old photographs and letters that chronicled a family history marked by both love and betrayal. "I don't know where to begin," she confessed to Robert one morning as they sat by a fogged window overlooking Regent's Park. "How can we reconcile a past that is so riddled with remorse and ghostly apparitions?" Robert, ever the quiet observer, responded thoughtfully, "We begin with honesty. We confront our own fears and unspoken memories. The house, with all its secrets, mirrors our own struggles. Perhaps then we can exorcise the demons inside us and in its halls." Victoria, her reporter's instinct now entwined with personal vulnerability, recorded every moment in her notepad. "There is a delicate interplay here," she explained during one late-night conversation as rain drummed continuously on the windowpane. "Between the ghost of lost opportunities and the living weight of regret. We are all caught up in a spectral dance with memories and with mystery." Her words resonated deeply as the group gathered once more in the heart of the manor. Together, they decided to reconstruct the narrative of the house from the myriad scraps of evidence and half-forgotten memories. Michael, whose extensive knowledge of supernatural lore lent gravitas to their quest, suggested that the mysterious markings in the hidden chamber might be part of an ancient rite of penance. "A ritual of confession, if you will," he mused, "where the past is laid bare to its consequences." The investigation stretched over long, unnerving weeks. Local archives in both London and Boston yielded additional documents, testimonies by relatives who spoke of inexplicable events, lost diaries that hinted at secret gatherings in the dead of night, and newspaper clippings that recounted tragedies with a hint of the paranormal. Each piece of the puzzle deepened the mystery while revealing the inescapable truth: the house had been a silent witness to a cycle of betrayal and sorrow, a living repository of guilt passed down like a cursed inheritance. Late one foggy evening, while the group reconvened in the manor's parlor, a break in the relentless gloom came in the form of a letter. Delivered by a nervous postman with anxious eyes in a quiet street of Camden, the envelope was addressed simply to the caretakers of Shadows. Inside, in spidery handwriting, was a message that chilled them to the core: the curse is not bound to these walls alone. It follows the blood, it haunts the heart. To break free, you must venture to the origin, where the sins of old were first sown. The letter pointed them toward a remote estate in rural Maine, a place shrouded in both natural beauty and an oppressive legacy. Reluctantly, yet compelled by a sense of destiny, the group embarked on a journey all the same. On a rainy morning in Portland, Maine, they found themselves driving along desolate roads lined with gnarled trees whose twisted branches scratched at the sky like desperate hands reaching for salvation. In the outskirts of a small town called Bar Harbor, the estate emerged from the mist, a sprawling mansion whose deteriorating grandeur bespoke both elegance and decay. Inside, the corridors were narrow and labyrinthine, the walls adorned with portraits of stern-faced ancestors who seemed to judge every trespass. Every whisper of wind through the shattered windows, every creak of ancient floorboards, felt loaded with portent. Within this new setting, the atmosphere grew almost intolerable. The group stayed in one of the mansion's few intact parlors, where Robert and Alice spent endless hours retracing the estate's dark history through unsorted documents in the library, a room filled with the scent of old paper and secrets. "I think the answers lie here," Robert said during one interrupted discussion as thunder rumbled overhead, "in the correspondence of those who first erected this cursed edifice. Perhaps our family's sins are interwoven with theirs." Alice, increasingly drawn into the psychological labyrinth of her ancestry, began experiencing visions that shattered her composure. At times, she would catch fleeting images, a reflection of a pale face in a mirror when no one else was around, a solitary figure watching her from beneath an archway, and on one occasion, she awoke in the dead of night to the disembodied sound of a lullaby drifting through the corridors. In hushed tones and sleepless confessions, she recounted these experiences to Victoria. "It's as if the past is trying to break through, to tell me something I've long tried to forget," she whispered, her eyes brimming with unspoken sorrow. Victoria, determined and empathetic, replied, "Sometimes, the only way to heal our wounds is to confront them. The ghosts of our past, though terrifying, hold the keys to our liberation. We must piece together these fragments, even if it means facing truths that are painful and raw." While Victoria and Alice wrestled with their personal demons, Michael and Robert continued compiling evidence. In a forgotten cabinet, they unearthed a stack of faded photographs documenting a series of clandestine gatherings held at the estate. In one of the most arresting images, a group of solemn figures stood in a ring, their eyes fixed on something unseen. At the center, a tall man in a weathered suit held a candle, casting long, quivering shadows on the wall. "This must be the origin," Michael proclaimed. "The moment when the veil between our world and the next grew dangerously thin." The group gathered in a cold, musty room lit only by a single, sputtering lantern. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and antiquity. With each new revelation meticulously discussed in urgent, low voices, the pieces of the puzzle began to click, each historical document, each personal confession adding new dimensions to a long-standing curse. Even as the mansion's structure groaned under the weight of history, the group felt themselves propelled toward an inevitable confrontation with the supernatural force that had haunted their bloodlines for generations. One rain-soaked night, under a sky that seemed determined to weep ceaselessly, the manor's oppressive presence reached its zenith. The group assembled in a long-forgotten chapel on the estate grounds, a small, crumbling structure with stained glass windows shattered by time and neglect. It was here that the ancient rites were to be performed, a final attempt to break the stranglehold of a curse rooted in old sins. With trembling hands, Alice arranged the artifacts they had recovered: a mirror fragment inscribed with cryptic symbols, a locket containing a faded portrait of a long-deceased relative, and a bundle of yellowed papers soaked in cryptic confessions. Robert began reciting passages from the diaries, his voice echoing in the vaulted space. "Let our hearts be the instrument that summons both truth and redemption," he intoned, eyes locked on a figure half hidden in the flickering shadows. Suddenly, the chapel door slammed shut with an unearthly force, and the temperature plummeted. The ground beneath them trembled as if an ancient mechanism had been triggered. In a cacophony of creaks and whispers, the spirit of the curse materialized, a spectral figure clad in tattered garments, eyes aglow with an unholy luminescence. "You dare disturb what should remain buried," the apparition boomed, its voice echoing off the broken stone walls. "The sins of the past are inexorable." The confrontation was immediate and intense. The group staggered back as the entity advanced, and for a moment, all recollections of regret and sorrow converged with primal terror. In that terrifying instant, Alice realized that the curse was not merely an external force, it was the embodiment of every secret, every lie, every act of betrayal. It was the mirror of their souls. Desperation gave way to resolve. With a newfound determination, she stepped forward, voice trembling but resolute. "We acknowledge our darkness. We accept our past. And we shall no longer be held captive by the ghosts of what we once were." The spectral figure faltered as if confronted by an implacable truth. In the ensuing silence, the very walls seemed to sigh, releasing the long-held burden of sorrow. The oppressive atmosphere lightened imperceptibly, as if the curse itself had been forced to reckon with its own existence. In that fragile moment of reconciliation between the living and the restless dead, a subtle change permeated the air, a solemn promise that even in darkness, there can be a path to redemption. Days later, as dawn broke over the ragged horizon of Bar Harbor, the group gathered outside the estate. The once oppressive mansion now appeared a relic freed from its spectral torment, its windows reflecting a tentative hope. Though the scars of the past would never fully vanish, the courageous act of confronting them had altered the course of their lives. In the gentle murmur of the sea and the soft rustle of autumn leaves, each one understood that the path to healing was not about erasing the past, but about accepting it and moving forward with the wisdom it conferred. In the months that followed, life gradually resumed its tentative normalcy. Alice returned to London with a newfound clarity, determined to rebuild her life with honesty and resilience. Robert continued his quiet work as a writer, his words now imbued with the weight of truth and the delicate balance of light and shadow. Victoria chronicled their journey in a series of in-depth articles that captivated readers in Boston and beyond, and Michael remained forever changed, his studies in the supernatural now tempered by the profound understanding of human frailty. Yet, on dark and stormy nights, when the wind whispered secrets through the alleys and old memories stirred in the silent corridors of their hearts, each would pause and remember the haunted halls of the manor, the pain of hidden sins, and the fierce courage that led them to transcend it all. The echoes of that fateful night would linger as both a warning and a benediction, a reminder that while the past may haunt us, it does not define us unless we allow it. Across continents and through the winding paths of the human soul, their stories intertwined, a tapestry woven from threads of regret, hope, and the resolute will to overcome. In a final, stirring act of defiance against the relentless pull of a cursed lineage, they had proven that even when shadows gather at the veil of midnight, the human heart is capable of summoning its own light. If you enjoyed the story, subscribe to my channel, like the video, and check the description for details on how to support my work.